Well, this movie was screwed from the outset, thanks to the Hollywood writers' strike that has pretty much frozen all production on anything, which I'm sure we're all thankful for. As a knock-on, SAG-AFTRA has also decided to strike, which has led to big-name actors and others joining the picket lines. And just like the miners' strike of the 1980s, no one wants to be a scab and cross the picket lines. And thanks to social media, if any named actors did, they would be plastered everywhere and their names dragged through the mud and cancelled. Plus, these people are all far-left liberal identitarians that would rather sell their grandmas than support a capitalist system. This movie was even more DOA than usual. That isn't to say that I don't support fair pay for fair work, I most certainly do. I'm just not convinced that the current quality of work deserves any of my support or sympathy. And this is the market that Blue Beetle has entered, a market that was already suffering from massive woke superhero movie fatigue, a market where the fans have left the room, and even the normies are starting to feel as though something has gone missing from the genre. Blue Beetle has turned up just as people are turning off, and if that wasn't bad enough, the actors and writers' strikes means that the stars of the movie can't even come out and promote it. Instead, they have to stay at home and watch as what could have been the start of a lucrative franchise fades back into the obscurity it came from. I mean, who the hell has ever heard of Blue Beetle? I'm sure there are some super fans and nerds that are champing at the bit at my flippant comment, but I am serious. No one knows this character. He is as venerable as Batman or Superman, but just not as interesting, so fell through the cracks of consciousness into the memory hole, and his reappearance can very easily be described as simply another part of Hollywood's woke agenda. The first two incarnations were, of course, the wrong race and colour, so were left inside the memory hole. But the third incarnation, a very recent incarnation, is Mexican, and therefore is a superhero worthy of getting a movie in the current identity politics biased era. But before I get started, please consider subscribing as that would really help me out, and if you like this content, give it a like. Okay, on with the vid. Now we come to the movie itself, and the first thing you notice about this movie is how much you're expected to read. Now I don't normally mind subtitles because it usually means that the movie is a bit more serious and wants to accurately represent the cultures shown on screen. You know how else you can do that? You just hire people who look the part and get them to use the correct accent, therefore bypassing the need to actually use the language of those being represented. Hello Hello is a perfect example of this, and funny as
Are you expecting us by any chance?
What does he say?
I don't know, I don't speak English.
Using subtitles is indulgent. It speaks of a filmmaker that has the time and money to do things his way, and doesn't have to worry that only 30 people on the planet are interested in what they are trying to say. If you want to appeal to a large, mostly monolingual market, you need to use their language for the vast majority of the dialogue, or you risk alienating them and making your market too small to make a profit, which unsurprisingly is what has happened. There is far too much Spanish in this movie, and it is very randomly placed. It is even more especially out of place considering this is a children's movie, and outside of some Spanish-speaking areas in America, most children will simply zone out the dialogue, making the movie become a load of drivel interspersed with explosions and robots hitting each other. Speaking of children, this movie feels as though it is aimed at 5 to 10-year-olds. In the same way that the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was. It all looks so silly and childish. The characters are cartoonish and ridiculous. The family of the main character is like a group of clowns made to live together for the amusement of a paying crowd. P.T. Barnum would have loved these guys. And yet the movie has a PG-13 rating, because it has out-of-place adult themes of body horror, killing, and nakedness. I have no idea who it is being marketed to, because it is not grown up enough for adults. It's too preschool looking for teens, but it's too adult for preteens. It simply has no audience, and thanks to the strikes, no one to even try and promote it to what audience it may have found. It is quite possibly the most pointless movie of the year. It has comedy elements, but it isn't even funny. Cobra Kai's Zolo Moridueno is as likeable as ever, and fits the cartoonish nature of the movie, but he feels very made for TV and just looks out of place. His family are a bunch of that cause most of the trouble that Zolo's character has to deal with. They in fact manage to infect him with the Blue Beetle's Scarab Alien, or whatever it's called, by being a bunch of incompetent bullies who couldn't keep their noses out of other people's business, which in turn leads directly to one of their deaths. The bad guy, in the form of a woman, Susan Sarandon, is laughably awful. She just looks like your average businesswoman in a suit. She reminds me of our current political and media class, in that she basically is just doing her job and trying to look after her own interests. The fact that she is hurting others is irrelevant, as long as she gets what she wants. Her assistant, Cyborg Man, not his actual name, but I never picked up on it, and it didn't matter, because he had his role, and his role was to be the strong bad guy that fights the good guy, which he does, so yeah. This movie was essentially just an identity politics propaganda piece. All it really wanted to do was pick up a bullhorn and march down the street yelling, "Look, a superhero that isn't white! Look how progressive I am!" But what else can you expect from a movie that called Batman a fascist? Blue Beetle has learned nothing from the failures of its recent brethren, and I have no doubt that when it bombs, and let's face it, it will, the blame will be aimed squarely at the fans who are sick of Hollywood's constant race baiting, and those that are of a fairer complexion. After all, someone has to be to blame, and the filmmakers certainly aren't self-aware enough to see what's reflected back at them in the mirror. This is all very tired, and it's very sad, but it can't last forever because at some point the well will go dry, and a parched and desperate Hollywood will come crawling back to us, begging for our hard-earned cash, and it won't be getting it until it starts making things that we, the non-brainwashed, non-ideologue public, want to see. We still have a while to wait, but with all the major studios losing money, things are starting to look up. This has been Movies Sucks In. Do not despair, at least we still have old movies. Signing out. Leave a like, share, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the flip side.